Open up the champagne, pop. It's my house, come on, turn it up. Hear a knock on the door and the night begins. Cause we've done this before, so you come on in. Make yourself at my home, tell me where you been. Pour yourself something cold, baby, cheers to this.
Hello everybody, welcome to Talking Real Estate with Angela Briante. I have a guest here today, Bill Shilling. He's a local real estate attorney. So I want to welcome Bill to the show, and Bill, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Angela.
My pleasure. So I've known Bill a really long time, and we're going to have some questions pertaining to short sales, bank-owned properties, New York State property disclosure form, a few other items that we're going to talk about, so I hope you enjoy the show today. So, Bill, I've known you a really long time. We probably about 25 years ago, when I first moved up, my family and I moved up to the area, you were running the Holiday on the Lake Parade. It had just begun, and I understand it's in existence 25 years now. And you are, regardless of, you don't never like to take credit for it, you're the big cheese behind it, and you've done an incredible job over the years. So it's an amazing event. I'm sure many of the viewers out there have seen the Holiday on the Lake and the trees and the menorah that have lined our lake shore on Lake Lenida, as well as the Chowder Festival. So if you want to just, speak a little bit about that to get us started before we go into real estate.
I have to say it's not my original idea. It was in play in the 60s. My father was on a Chamber of Commerce, and they strung a group of trees where we do, but there wasn't that many. There were about 25. And it stopped after about 3 or 4 years. They tried to put a tree in the lake.
A floating tree?
Yeah, in a boat.
I never heard of this
It
story.
capsized, and I think that was the end. And
Okay.
it didn't reassemble for a very long time, and the people that you know and I know would talk about it. And it was just a lark that I ended up calling DEP on a business matter. And I'll never forget her name. Her name was Marilyn Shanahan. And I said, by the way, why can't we have trees on the lake? And she said, I think you can. And she said, let me get back to you. Well, a couple days later, she got back to me and she said we could. And it was that point we assembled the group that you well know, Al and Lou, and a great group of people.
Great group of people.
And for 25 years, we've done it. And I do get entirely too much credit for it because the committee is so easy to work with. And we all define roles, and our roles don't change because then it would be difficult.
Sure.
But everybody has the same role every year, and I just use my office to assemble the troops. And it has become a staple in our community.
It has.
Due to the committee that works so hard, and the people that contribute. And this is our 25th year. And I can't believe it's our 25th year, but it is. And we're going to do something different, something special. I can't figure out what it is, but 25 years is a long time to do anything.
It is. I'm excited. And each year, there usually is a slight change each year. We have the concerts on the courthouse steps. Prior to that, they were at Drew Church, and then we had the holiday party. So each year, and then remember one year we illuminated. We just keep thinking of different ideas.
Well,
we try things, take them away.
That's true. We did a lot of different things. Some failed, some didn't. We tried to have a concert in each one of the churches.
Right.
Different types of choirs, and it was too much.
Right.
And it was. There were things that we did that just didn't resonate, didn't happen. For the last, I don't know, it's got to be 15 years. We really haven't changed that much. We add little things, but it's the Santa hayride, it's the Chowder Fest, and then it's the parade, and then it's the tree lighting.
That's right. Yeah.
And the concerts on every corner is fun. That's a big part of it. And if you ever really want to get festive, and you know this as well as anybody, just go up to where the floats are assembled
Oh,
My God, it's
that's
like
priceless.
every one of them have their own music, and there's now food being sold up there, and we've had our festival in blizzards, we've had it in torrential rains, but when the weather is right, it's just a really
It is
good
just
experience.
rows and rows and rows of floats. And we can only hope the new distillery is able to accommodate us, because that's a big part of the fun for all the participants is up there.
I snuck in the county clerk's office and wrote an easement on the deed.
Oh, yeah, smart.
So we're,
Being an attorney, you knew the proper verbiage.
well, I'm going to work on that.
Okay, yeah, that would be a
Yeah.
big. We need to line everybody up in
Right.
a location that could accommodate. Also, the Chowder Festival I thought was a wonderful addition, and that was just how many years ago was that?
That's probably been probably of the 25, maybe 20.
Oh, that long. Okay,
And
I
I'll
thought
tell
about-
you,
yeah.
I'll tell you the origin of that. I stole that one as well. When we were younger, we went up to Agunquit, and they have a festival called Christmas by the Sea, and one of their staples was a Chowder Fest. So
Okay.
I took that and brought it here.
Love it.
Yeah.
So thankful for you to
Oh,
do all
stop.
these things or these ideas, and it's just you're
couldn't
an
do it.
amazing individual.
I could not do it without the great people in the committee who have done it with me for 25 years. I'm a part of it. I'm not that big a cog
Well,
to it.
you lead us all, and you're right. The committee is
thank
it's truly
you.
like family at this point.
It
I mean,
really
everybody
is.
really just enjoys, not even giving back to the community, but enjoys creating this environment around the holidays for
It's
the
good for our
community.
community,
It is.
for our
It
hamlet.
really
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
It puts us on the map. I always said that it's a really great event. So I'd like to cover a few things today. The first is a question that myself, as well as many of my agents, are asked about short sales. What exactly are they? I owe more on the home than it could be worth, and what is a short sale in the process of? So could you kind of speak
Yeah.
to short sales a little bit?
It really had its start in 2008 and 2009 when the economy tanked a little bit, and many people got behind. And property values depressed, and so people found themselves with a mortgage that far exceeded the fair market value. So they inevitably became into default, and the short sale concept was going to the bank and asking for the bank to take less than that which they're owed. And in the beginning, I used to process them myself, thinking it was a sign of things to come, given the fact that the economy was not so good. And it was unbelievably arduous and difficult, and banks were unclear as to what they're doing. They doubted the fair market value of the offer of the short sale, and they doubted the ability of the mortgagor to pay the mortgage. It was generally taking about 16 to 18 months just to get to the table.
Wow.
So I thought it was good, because I thought the banks would suddenly realize that they can't manage and they can't maintain, and that they would ultimately, write off their losses and make this thing happen more expeditiously. It didn't happen. It still doesn't happen. Short sales in my world are taking 12 months. I have some that are older than that. Sometimes they're declined after a long time waiting. And it's really, to me, it's an opportunity for a seller to make a good, for the buyer to make a good investment. However, that buyer has to not have to matriculate kids in school or have a lease obligation, because you never know when it's going to close.
Sure.
And the seller has some challenges too. Excuse me. The short sale bank can release the mortgage but not release the obligation. That's called a deficiency. So yes, they release the mortgage, but then they go after the owner for a deficiency. Sometimes they'll waive the deficiency, which is a good thing. But then there's an IRS doctrine called forgiveness income. So that if you sold for $250 and you had a mortgage of $300, the IRS could hit you for $50,000 of forgiveness income, unless your accountant can prove that the seller is insolvent. So there's a lot of perils in short sale, both for the seller and the buyer. I'm not crazy about them. I did them a lot more because it was a sign of the times. They were very prevalent. But now they're not as prevalent, and I shy away from them as much as I can. I'll do them occasionally, but I'm not a big fan because people are inevitably disappointed.
Sure. It's really an unknown. You don't know what the reaction of the bank will be. And
that's what I tell my clients,
right.
especially the buyers. They say, oh, we've got to put our kids in school in September. I said, don't think you can count on a September closing date. You don't know.
Right.
And that uncertainty is no good except for somebody who loves the house and can wait a year, wait even longer to get the house they love.
And sometimes lose it. I've experienced a few transactions where everything seems like it's going in the right direction, and then the property's foreclosed on.
Or foreclosed, or the short sale is declined.
Right.
So there's a lot of uncertainty there. I think the human tendency is to want certainty, and you don't get them in short sales.
Right. Which leads us to the next topic of foreclosed properties.
Right. So the market fails, short sales are attempted and not achieved, and then the bank goes to foreclosure and takes the property back. This is a better deal for buyers because quite the opposite from a short sale. Bank-owned properties, they want to close yesterday. And their contracts are oftentimes very unfair, very one-sided. They will not make repairs. They will not guarantee municipal searches are in place. But if you've got a good value, you'll close in 30 days. It's great for a cash buyer. But it's a very onerous contract, so you have to negotiate your inspection because sometimes the houses are winterized, you don't know what you're getting, and you have to negotiate with the bank the ability to de-winterize, get in there and find out exactly what you're buying.
Right.
But I prefer them to short sales because I know that at some point in the near future we're going to go to a closing. And they'll give you a mortgage contingency and they'll give you an engineer contingency. So you can sort of dissipate the unfairness in the contract by negotiating those two items.
Another question I hear a lot is foreclosed properties, properties that the bank has taken back, are they always sold with the clear title?
Yes. Their contract says they will.
Okay.
And oftentimes, there was a big scandal. You heard about a law firm in Buffalo that did all these foreclosures for all these banks. And many of the judgment creditors, or even the mortgagors, were served with what we call sewer service, or not served at all.
Yeah.
And there was all kinds of fraud and all kinds of problems with that firm just flat out misrepresenting the status of who they served. So that when a buyer buys at foreclosure, he's entitled to good title, but the title company you hire to make sure will oftentimes find flaws in the foreclosure process. But if that's the case, you get your money back, or you can do something to remedy the deficiency. But it really is, to me, if I'm an investor and I'm a fixer-upper, it's a good means to make money if you're in the trade and you can do these things yourself. And I have a lot of clients that look for these things. They buy at a very, very reduced rate. Banks understanding they can't manage and maintain. They want to get rid of it, get it out of their inventory. The builder, handyman guy who buys, or lady who buys, puts a couple $1,000s into it and can make some money. So if I had my choice between one of the two, I'd absolutely take the bank owner.
I agree.
I'll bet you would. Yeah.
More of a known outcome, that's for sure. Which leads to another very popular question I've heard over the past 20 years I've been in real estate is the, well, actually not all 20 years, because the New York State Property Disclosure Form, I don't remember the exact year it came out, but it's actually a very popular document that when a seller goes to sell a home, they have the option of filling out this document. and we advise them always to speak to their attorney. So I was just wondering what you would tell your clients, or what you do tell your clients in regards to the New York State property disclosure form.
Well, I think it was enacted in about 2004, 2005, if I'm not mistaken. And it was an attempt on the part of the legislature to sort of even the playing fields, and for the seller to have to empty their soul to tell them what has been wrong with the house, what currently is wrong with the house, and what could go wrong in the house, believe it or not. And when it was first started, a lot of my clients, and I sort of said fine, wanted to fill it out. And I had a very dear friend who filled it out. And what you do when you fill it out is you have a written representation as the condition of the house. So my friend had a very, very delicate schematic in his backyard, and just touching the yard was going to blow everything off, and he had written that he had never had any flooding problems. Well, the guy came in and he put a backhoe in there and dug it out, and of course he flooded like crazy. And then on the strength of that property disclosure representation, my friend and client was served and went to court. And it wasn't unusual. People were suing on the representations made on that document time and time again. So that it's become very, very prevalent in my practice, whether I'm buyer or seller. If I'm seller, my client is not filling that out. I'm not. I almost would refuse to represent if he fills it or she fills it out. The idea of selling is to sell it and be rid of it.
Right.
You want to be done with it. Open up the house to the buyer. Let them bring engineers, technicians, whatever. But in the end, it's your house. And that is contrary to the property disclosure. You fill it out, you have something that survives the closing, that written representation. So my advice to my client is, as a seller, don't fill it out. You want to be done with it. Again, let them have at it at the house any way they want to. But give them the $500, which is the fine or penalty for not filling it out, and then know that you're selling as is.
Right. Well worth that $500.
I think so.
I agree.
Now, my clients often, as buyers, say, why didn't they fill that out? Why are they trying to hide it? And I can tell them that since the inception, if I've seen, I'm practicing 36 years, if I've seen the disclosure form more than 10 or 15 times, that's a lot.
Right.
Nobody does it,
Right.
at least not in this area.
I saw it once filled out, and it was actually my seller. And the seller did not build the home, but he had been in there over 30 years and said, I know everything about this home, and I'm comfortable to fill it out. And I guess he received the support of his attorney, or not, but he chose to fill out the form, and he did. It probably took him an hour to fill it out because there's many questions.
48.
Yeah, 48 questions. And just around the time, getting around the time we were about to close, there was a story told to him, and he had shared it with me, that it had to do with electrical work. Somebody had done electrical work, received proper underwriting, came in, they approved all the work, town hall approved that it was all done properly, and then there was a fire in the home. And then what had occurred was they went back, and the seller had filled out that form and put everything that they were aware of. However, they did what happened. I don't know the exact outcome, but the seller, there was fault on the seller, because what they said is, even though A was done properly, that electrician, or they should have been aware that B wasn't done properly. And then that's how the fire occurred.
Right.
So that did spook my seller a little bit, but he did continue to move forward. Received the $500 at close, or didn't have to spend it, I should say, and it worked out, for him, I guess, as far as I know. But that is a big topic in our industry, that form, and you seem consistent with what most attorneys do say.
I think that it's almost universal in our area that you get the $500. doesn't apply to condos or transfers between spouses, for example. It's only to arm's length contracts.
Okay.
Co-ops, it doesn't apply to either.
Okay. There's also a new protective measure that has been put in place for the buyer called TRIDS.
Yeah.
Can you speak to
Yeah.
that a little bit?
One of the bad things about going to a closing under the old HUD system was that you would be filling out number forms at the table, and all of a sudden your client's face gets ashen white, and the $10,000 they were supposed to be spending at closing came up to $25,000 or something like that. And it happened a lot. It just was, okay, they're ready financially, they seem to be ready, yes, let's close. An attorney would fill out what's called a HUD form at closing, and in the end, you tell your client to write a check for $20,000 when they thought they were getting by with 10. So of course, they run outside, they call their mother or father, they ask if credit cards are acceptable and things like that, and that was prevalent. It was really, it happened too often. And even as an attorney for the buyer, you try to get the numbers, but the banks were so uncertain as to what they were charging. It was really a table-side development.
Yeah.
So TRIDS is a thing, some people said in the beginning it was the reason I drink, TRIDS. But TRIDS stands for Truth in Lending, RESPA, something. But what it involves is the bank attorney is focal. He gets all the numbers from the brokers, from the title company, from this and that, sends them over to the bank. All of a sudden, a loan estimate is prepared. Back and forth they go. Every week there's a different loan estimate, and then it becomes a closing disclosure. When the bank is ready, they ask, excuse me, for the final closing disclosure. Did anything change? The tax adjustment, this and that. And then when the closing disclosure is deemed to be final, it gets sent to the borrower. By law, that bank and that borrower cannot close for 3 days. It's hard and fast, 3 days. During that 3 days, that final disclosure can be questioned by the borrower, explained by the attorney or by the banker, and that person should have a pretty good realization of what they're going through. And then the bank attorney, whose job becomes a policeman at the closing, looks at the number that the loan estimate says they should be paying and compares it to the checks they wrote. And in theory, what has to happen when that happens is the bank attorney says, you're writing more than the CD says you should, we have to adjourn. So it was a real difficult time in the beginning with it because nobody knew what they were doing. This is about 2 or 3 years old now. But now I have to say, imagine government doing a good thing. It made it such that borrowers now know within a couple, you get a fuel reading at closing. Well, nobody knows it. But borrowers now know within a couple $100 what they're going through. And if it's more, effectively, the bank attorney's job is to compare the numbers, and if they're more than what the CD says, he or she has to adjourn it. So I think it serves a good purpose because I will tell you, for a long time, going to a closing was oftentimes guesswork. What were they going to spend?
Right.
And the bank couldn't give you a straight number. So I think it works. It's a lot more work for a bank attorney, but in the end, the borrower knows going in what he's going to spend or she's going to spend.
Sounds like a really good program. I guess the last question I have is, do you have, I know the industry as a whole has changed from certificate of occupancies and what banks will accept and not, and things are just a lot more stringent, such as buried oil tanks and wood-burning stoves. So do you have any recommendations or just thoughts on typical buyers and sellers in the real estate market from your side of the fence and what they should be aware of and not and prepare for?
Well, back in the day, there were a lot of things that were sort of an afterthought that were never focal to a closing. For example, buried oil tanks. Oil tanks were in the ground. That was the way it is.
Right, right.
And other things like wood-burning stoves, for example, and pellet stoves. The piping of a pellet stove or a wood-burning stove has to be a certain degree. If it's too dramatic, it's a fire hazard. So that's regulated by the town. I just told you how the mortgage process got better. Now I'm going to tell you why it's so much more difficult. You can pick a number of things as you start, whether it's a bad appraisal, whether it's a bank that just can't move, all of the things that are involved with buying, like radon, like lead paint, like insects, like mold. I had a violation from Patterson the other day which said excessive bamboo. So, so that every day there's a different flavor of the week, it seems. And back in the day, you know, it was more easy. There were less governmental regulations. The buyer didn't know what they were going to pay, but at least they knew what was ahead of them. In this process, there's a lot more. There
is, and my thought to that, and then I think we have to wrap up, but is that it's essential. So essential for a seller to do their due diligence prior to listing their home, because they need to go to town hall or their agent and really identify any violations. Sometimes a home was purchased 20, 30 years ago, and these were not issues then.
Right.
Now they are. They stay with the deed. So that is, in summary, you know, preparation is key when you're preparing to sell your home.
I agree.
Well, Bill, we could talk for hours on real estate and so many other things. So I want to thank you so much for being part of the show. It's
thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, and we'd love to have you back. And we could just definitely plan lots of other topics, because you're a wealth of knowledge. You're an extremely, how do I say it? You're very honest, hardworking, very well-known real estate attorney in the community. And I really, you know, I can't say enough things about, you know, the quality of the work you do. So
thank you,
so
Angela.
thank
That's
you,
very
and
nice
thank you
of you to say.
also for the Holiday on the Lake and the Chowder Festival.
Thank you for the Holiday on the Lake.
Well, it wouldn't be where it is if you didn't, you know, put it all together early on.
Well,
so
enough.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Angela.
you.
Okay.
All right, my pleasure.
Open up the champagne, pop. It's my house, come on, turn it up. Hear a knock on the door and the night begins. 'Cause we've done this before, so you come on in. Make yourself at my home, tell me where you been. Pour yourself something cold, baby, chill.